Here is a mistake that quietly poisons your analytics before you ever look at a single chart, and almost nobody catches it until the numbers stop making sense. You set up your tracking, you start logging what people do in your product, and 6 months later, you sit down to answer a simple question, and you cannot, because the same action got recorded 3 different ways under 3 different names by 3 different versions of you. Today, I want to talk about the humble thing that prevents all of that, the event tracking plan, and why writing one down before you collect data is the cheapest insurance you will ever buy. I run my own small businesses, and I have learned this one the hard way, more than once. I am not here to sell you a fancy analytics platform. I am the person who opened his own event data a year in and found a mess he had to spend a whole weekend untangling. So this is the plain version, the way I would explain it to a friend who is about to add tracking to their first product, including the parts where good intentions quietly fall apart. What a tracking plan actually is. A tracking plan is just a written document that lists every event you record, what each one means, and the details you attach to it. That is the whole idea. It is not a tool you buy, it is a decision you write down. At its simplest, it is a spreadsheet with a row for every action worth tracking, a clear name for that action, a plain English description of when it should fire, and a handful of properties that travel with it. Before you touch any code or any analytics tool, you decide on paper what you are going to call things and what each thing means. Why this matters more than it sounds. The reason this matters is that analytics is only as trustworthy as the consistency underneath it. A chart is just a pile of events counted up. If the underlying events are named carelessly, the chart is confidently wrong, and confidently wrong is far more dangerous than obviously broken. When a number looks clean but rests on messy data, you make real decisions on it, and you never think to question the foundation. The tracking plan is that foundation, and a couple of hours spent on it upfront saves you from a class of problem that is genuinely painful to fix after the fact. The mess when you skip it. Let me describe the mess, because you may recognize it. Without a plan, you name events on the fly, in the moment, while you are busy building something else. 1 week a user finishing registration fires an event called sign up complete. A month later, adding a new flow, you call the same idea account created. Later still, on a rushed evening, it becomes reg done. Now you have 3 names for one moment in a customer's life. The counts are split across all 3, and no single chart tells you how many people actually signed up. Multiply that across every important action, and your analytics slowly turns into a room full of mislabeled boxes. And the damage is not just a wrong total. A funnel built on those split names shows people vanishing at a step they never actually reached. So you go and fix a problem that does not exist while the real leak keeps running quietly in the background. Names are the hardest part. The core of a good plan is a naming convention, and naming is genuinely the hard part, because there is no single right answer, only a consistent one. What matters is that you pick a pattern and never drift from it. A pattern that works well is object then action. So you describe the thing, and then what happened to it. Account created, project deleted, invoice sent, subscription upgraded. It reads naturally. It groups related events together when you sort them, and it scales because a new person can almost guess the name of an event before they look it up. The specific style matters less than the promise that every event obeys the same one. Decide on a case and stick to it. A smaller but real decision is the shape of the text itself. Some people write events in lowercase with spaces, some use underscores, some run the words together. It honestly does not matter which you choose. What matters is that you choose one and every event follows it. Because analytics tools treat 2 differently formatted names as 2 completely separate events, and you will not notice until your counts are quietly split in half. Write the chosen style at the top of your plan in 1 sentence, so there is never a debate, not even with yourself 6 months from now. Properties are where the value hides. An event on its own tells you something happened. The properties attached to it tell you the story worth knowing. A property is just a piece of context you record alongside the event, like the plan a user was on when they upgraded, or the source that brought them in, or the size of an order. These are what let you slice a number later and actually learn something, instead of staring at a single total. So for each event in your plan, I write down the 2 or 3 properties that matter, and just as importantly, I decide their names and formats once, because a property called plan in one event and plan type in another is the same split problem all over again, one level down. Here is what that buys you in practice. With a source property on your sign-up event, you can suddenly see whether the customers who arrive from one channel stick around longer than the ones from another. And that is the difference between spending your next marketing dollar well or spending it blind. A small example makes this concrete. Let me sketch a tiny plan so this stops being abstract. Imagine a simple subscription app. I might track just 6 events to start. Account created when the record is saved. Trial started when someone begins their free run. Project created, the first real sign they are using the thing. Subscription started when a card is charged the first time. Subscription cancelled when someone turns off renewal and support ticket opened, because unhappiness usually leaves a trail. Each row gets its one-sentence description and a couple of properties, like the plan name on the subscription events and the source on account created. That is the whole thing. 6 clearly named events, each defined once, and already I can answer how many people signed up, how many activated, how many paid, and how many left, without guessing at any of it. You add the 7th event the day a real question actually needs it, not before. Keep it small on purpose. Here is the discipline that separates a plan that survives from one that rots. Track less than you think you need. It is tempting to record every click and every hover, on the theory that more data is always better, but a plan bloated with hundreds of events nobody looks at is a plan nobody maintains. I would rather have 20 events that map to the real moments in my business, the ones tied to a customer signing up, activating, paying, and leaving, than 200 that drown the signal in noise. Start with a handful of actions that genuinely change your understanding of the business, and add more only when a specific question demands it. There is a hidden cost to bloat beyond maintenance too. Every extra event is one more thing to implement correctly, one more thing to check when something breaks, and one more name that someone can get subtly wrong. A lean plan is not just easier to read, it is easier to keep honest. Write the description, not just the name. The column people skip is the description, and it is the one that saves you. Next to each event name, write one plain sentence that says exactly when it should fire. Account created fires the moment the account record is saved, not when the form opens and not when the welcome email sends. That sentence sounds obvious the day you write it and becomes priceless the day you, or a contractor, or your first hire, has to decide whether a new bit of code should reuse an existing event or make a new one. The description is the shared definition that keeps everyone, including future you, honest. The plan is a source of truth. Once it exists, the tracking plan becomes the single source of truth for your data, and that role is the whole point. Before anyone adds a new event, they check the plan. Does something like this already exist? If it does, they reuse the exact name. If it genuinely does not, they add a new row with a description before writing the code. That one habit, check the plan first, is what stops the slow drift into chaos. It does not need special software. A shared spreadsheet that everyone treats as the authority works completely fine for a small operation, and it is what I still use for mine. Review it on a schedule. A plan is not a write once and forget document, it is a living one, so I give it a light review now and then, maybe once a quarter. I look for events that no longer fire because the feature changed, names that quietly drifted despite my best intentions, and new actions that became important and deserve tracking. This review is short, but it keeps the plan matching the product as it actually is today, rather than as it was the day I first wrote it down. A plan that no longer describes reality is worse than none, because you trust it without checking. The honest limits. Let me be honest about what a tracking plan does not do. It does not make your data correct all by itself, because someone still has to implement each event faithfully and check that it fires when the plan says it should. And it does not tell you what to build or what any number means. It is not a strategy, it is a foundation, the boring layer that makes everything built on top of it trustworthy. A plan with sloppy implementation underneath is still a plan you cannot fully trust, so the writing and the doing have to match every time. Verity Jenafan Ferry Titam, Fority Dukan Duin Itandian. If this made event tracking feel less like a technical chore and more like a habit you can actually keep, that is exactly what I am going for. Every one of these explainers lives in writing at dataresearchanalysiscollection. The whole library in plain English, so you can read this one again slowly while you sketch your own plan, or pick up the next piece when you are ready. No hype, no promises, just the method explained clearly, so you can make your own call. A tracking plan is a written document listing every event, what it means, and the properties on it. Pick one naming pattern and one text style and never drift from them, because tools treat a different name as a different event. Attach a few meaningful properties and name them once. Keep the whole thing small on purpose and write a one-sentence description for every event so the definition is shared. Treat the plan as your single source of truth, check it before adding anything new, and review it lightly every quarter. It is a couple of hours of unglamorous work that keeps every number you ever look at honest. I will see you in the next one.